My fellow Americans, I'm your president, Matthew Ruiz. Thanks for tuning in to episode 1, American Dream or American Scheme, of the Dream Team podcast.
Thanks, Mr. President. My name is Hardeep.
I'm Jim.
And I'm Rolando.
Today, my compatriots and I want to talk to you about a subject of deep concern to all Americans and to many people in all parts of the world, the American Dream.
Thanks, Mr. President. We've all heard about this term, the American Dream, being thrown around, but what exactly is it? Is it the desire to get richer, own property, have family?
Actually, while all of these are ideas that stem from the concept of the American Dream, I think that the fundamental idea of the American Dream is something a bit more abstract, not just making money or something of that nature.
To me, the American Dream is a combination of all those ideas. But to really understand the fundamental concept of the American Dream, we have to look at some ways that people have strived to achieve it.
I think that the 2021 Cuban protests are a good example of this. A lot of Cubans during this time went out to the streets to protest against the oppressive regime that deprived them of basic liberties. U.S. Senator Marco Rubio noted the similarities between the Americans' ideals of freedom and democracy and the driving force behind these protests in Cuba, arguing that they want liberty, and if there are any people on this earth that should understand that, it should be Americans.
Rolando, I thank you for your knowledge and that of my Senator Marco Rubio. Of course, freedom is a fundamental right, especially for Americans. It's the reason the country exists in the first place. It's only natural that the American dream means liberty for many.
Ultimately, I think these protests are a great example of the American Dream, even though they're in Cuba. To me, the American Dream isn't one singular dream, but the freedom to chase any dream you like, whether it be wealth, love, or actual liberty from oppression.
There's actually more to the dream than that dream, as many people question whether or not they can ever achieve it, even if they work hard to do it. I believe that the concept of the American Dream not only gives you the freedom to chase it, but also promises that it is attainable when one works hard. As F. Scott Fitzgerald clearly illustrated in The Great Gatsby, this book is a commentary on the American Dream. And Fitzgerald argues that for tomorrow we will run faster, stretch our arms farther, and one fine morning, so we beat on, books against the current, blowing back ceaselessly into the past.
Speaking of The Great Gatsby, I think that book is a great way to talk about how the American Dream has changed as well. If the American Dream really is about the freedom to pursue your dream, then what those dreams are would significantly change based on what the American Dream is as well.
To expand on June's claim, this is clearly illustrated by the vast differences in the dreams of Ysabe, who is the main character of the movie In the Heights, and Jay Gatsby, the titular character of The Great Gatsby. Gatsby wants to prove himself to Daisy Buchanan by becoming wealthy, while Ysabe searches for his identity and a place where he can call his home.
To talk a bit more about Hardwick's argument, as Hardwick pointed out, the central dream driving Gatsby's actions in Fitzgerald's book, The Great Gatsby, is a desire to get wealthy in order to pursue his lost love of Daisy Buchanan. Gatsby's desire to be with Daisy are reflected in a conversation with Nick, a narrator and friend of Gatsby, in which he states, "Can't repeat the past? Why, of course you can repeat the past." This insistence on repeating the past shows Gatsby's strong dream of being with Daisy, which is very different from many other people's dreams. One example of which will be Ysabe from the film In the Heights.
So to expand on this idea, Ysabe is a Latino and came from nothing to America. He has long believed that he needs to go back to the Dominican Republic to find his home, but he ultimately realizes, by the end of the movie, that he is already where he belongs, and continues to pursue his dreams. This is shown at the end of the movie when Ysabe sings, "I found my island. I've been on it this whole time. I'm home."
The reason why they have different dreams is because of their different origins, experience, and livelihoods. It stands to reason that the American Dream entails fairly significantly different things for everyone.
While this is very true, Dream, the overall idea of what the American Dream is, at its core, is very similar, as they both want freedom, albeit in different forms, and they both want to achieve it. Gatsby sought to be free from his poor background so he can achieve his dream of being with Daisy, while Ysabe ultimately decides to be free from his old home and finds a new one in the Washington Heights.
But of course, the ways that people perceive the American Dream don't just differ across regions and groups of people, but throughout time as well. Each generation has had a different interpretation of what the American Dream entails, and have used different pathways to try to reach it. I think that some good example of how this dream has changed over time are Walt Whitman's poem I Hear America Singing and Langston Hughes' poem I Too. Written in the late 1800s, I Hear America Singing focuses on how ownership of property is one way to achieve the American dream, saying how each person is singing what belongs to him or her and to none else.
This poem presents a more traditional view of the American dream, one that says that the path to freedom and independence is through the ownership of property. This idea can even be seen as far back as the founding of our country, by our founding fathers and fellow presidents. Back then, ownership of property was strongly emphasized as an important part of personal freedom. In fact, this personal freedom of owning property was even denied to other marginalized groups like women and black peoples.
Thank you, Mr. President, for your insight. And as the years went on, new interpretations of this dream developed, one of which is presented in Langston Hughes' response to Walt Whitman's poem 60 years later, I Too. In this poem, Hughes presents the idea that African Americans can also achieve their American dream, when one day society will see how beautiful African American culture is and be ashamed.
Using my presidential hearing, it sounds like this poem isn't really focusing at all on the idea of owning property to achieve the American dream, but more on social equality.
I agree, Mr. President. As time went on, new paths opened for people to pursue the American dream, and underrepresented groups, such as African Americans, saw equality as a way for them to eventually be able to achieve the freedom and independence. So while both of these time periods hold the same basic values of the American dream in common, the methods people used to achieve it hold significant differences, whether it was through owning property, achieving financial independence, or through equal rights reform. But knowing what the American dream entails is fine and all, but is it possible to achieve? Or has it just faded away into some distant memory?
Well, Rolando, I think the American dream is possible. This idea is explored in the Heights at the end of the movie, in which Usnavi is able to realize his American dream of finding a place he can call home. America!
I agree, Mr. President, and just like Usnavi, many other immigrants have been able to achieve their own American dream in this country. For example, my parents were able to leave Cuba and move to the US, where through their hard work and determination they were able to fulfill their hope of independence and freedom from an oppressive regime.
That's really great, Rolando. Independence and freedom is what my country is all about. While I was born here in the US of A, my parents share a similar tale to yours. My parents immigrated around 20 years ago from Chile in hopes of a better life here in Florida. And luckily, they were able to accomplish these dreams, have me, and send me to a great school.
Wow, Mr. President, it seems we're even more alike than even I realized.
Correctamundo. Just like Usnavi accomplished his dream of being with Vanessa, and,
While Usnavi wouldn't be with her for long.
well, just like Usnavi found his home, our parents also accomplished their own American dreams. This just goes to show that the American dream is still possible and attainable. We are living proof of it. The very thought of the American dream is what drives us and fuels us in our everyday lives. With these goals in mind, we can live our lives to the fullest, beating on as boats against the current.
Thanks, Mr. President. That was well said. I think we're nearing the end of our discussion here, so let's answer one last and most important question. How does all this pertain to us?
I guess this all pertains to our own lives because even though people's dreams have changed, the American dream is still ever present in today's society.
We know characters like Gatsby wanted fame and fortune, and Usnavi wanted to find happiness in a home. Langston Hughes highlights this change as he also wishes to achieve the American dream, despite being a black man in times of segregation.
Well, Langston Hughes was able to overcome these concerns as there is much more equality in America than there was a few centuries ago.
Yes, and despite the fact that the American dream has changed or is different for some, it's still possible. People past, present, and future can achieve the American dream. You can achieve the American dream. If you didn't know that then, you do now. It is always important to remember the words of Emily Dickinson, that hope is the thing with feathers, that perches in the soul.
When searching for your own American dream, it is important to never lose hope and keep moving forward.
A dream is a wish your heart makes when you're fast asleep.
Well, I think that's it, right? Thank you all for tuning in.
Farewell. Toodles.
And so goodbye, God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.